Hi, I'm Brandon Reavis from the Natural Resources Conservation Service in Oklahoma, State Rangeland Management Specialist. Just here to visit a little bit about drought and thought processes on drought and what we can do to mitigate some of those things. You always hear folks say the best time to prepare for a drought is when you're not in it, and that's always a great idea to do, is have a plan. Have that plan outlined so that you can really know some key aspects of when you're going to start implementing different things for drought management, and knowing when those key times are. Is that based on growing season conditions as far as rainfall? Is it based on what time of the year it is, knowing that the majority of our warm season native grass forages are produced at the beginning towards the middle of summer. And so make sure that we can get those items outlined in a plan so that we have some key targeted dates to figure that out. Once we have that figured out, then we can have the different items that we're going to have to implement that plan. And so thinking about things like, do we have a good idea on what animals we would want to try to cull out of the herd first? Are those the older animals? Are those the ones that have been less productive? Maybe it's we have some breeding stock versus just normal stock, and so we want to make sure and hold on to some of that key breeding stock as well. And so looking at having that in there and having a lot of flexibility. For some folks, that may be cutting back on our herd size initially, and then supplementing maybe with stocker cattle or some other type of animal as well, in order to have that flexibility in that plan. And then ultimately reading the conditions out there on the ground and based on what the grazing operation is. Sometimes if it's a continuous operation, we might pull that back again, like I said, on the stocking rate, continue to operate that way. And if it's in some sort of a rotational grazing, we might pull that back and start changing the timing of our rotations out there on the ground. And so there's a couple of different ways when we start really talking about managing that grass. And then it's always important to make sure that we have a high quality water source. And so sometimes that can be an issue when we start looking at things like, do we have wells in areas of pastures that we have continuous good adequate water versus maybe having ponds that we could start to see go dry. And so really looking at all of those options and trying to describe that in a plan is what we want to do, and trying to determine the implementation. And sometimes that could be a multi-step. Some folks, might have a first step that's rather easy, and then as we move on, if the drought continues, then those choices become more difficult. But that's really the main part of what we look at as far as drought planning and contingency planning with NRCS, and when we work with producers.